I just want to sort of talk about a bit of stuff. I just want to say that there's a lot of gloom and doom out there. And I have books that have mentioned that people tend to sort of... You may have heard that bad news is good news. And I seem to notice that that is true. When you look at sort of things that, a lot of sort of, bit like Alex Jones style stuff where they're talking about a lot of funny stuff to do with FEMA and collapses and this and that and a lot of panic. I get a lot of views in any of my videos that relate to all that sort of stuff. And even there's a few other channels I know of who have similar stuff and they get a massive amount of views and subscribers. And even, old G for T, same thing with him, if it's any sort of gloom and doom stuff, bang, the views come right on hard sort of thing. But there is something in a book I've got that explains that people tend to, I don't know what it is in the mind, but they tend to want to have something to panic about or something to worry about. Now, I thought it may be something to do with having life a bit too cushy, not enough things going wrong in your day-to-day life that may cause it. But it seems that one person who was very high up in business dealings in a company, very high ranking, I think he might have even been a CEO, mentioned that he used to be stressing about company takeovers and shares prices and all stuff like this and big deals going down and if they'd make the deal and what the conditions would be and all this sort of thing, and sort of stuff like that. And he said, I used to be paranoid about that and not sweat any of the smaller stuff. It didn't matter a damn if the lawn wasn't mowed. But he said, now I'm retired, I'm all worried about the lawn being spot on. And he said, I panic as much about the garden not looking like crap as I used to about all these business dealings that were, worth tens of millions of dollars that were, passing through his hands. So I think humans do have a bit of a thing to sort of pull themselves in an equilibrium of, things being nice and things being worried, but it's also a perspective, and it's not as though their life, they want things to be harder or they want things to be less hard and have an equilibrium between things being, panicked or not panicked. It's sort of like as though it's a matter of perspective. The same when you're on a plane, the baby starts crying. You think, oh, I would give anything to shut that baby up. And then when the plane starts dipping and shaking and getting the shutters and the pilot comes over and says, we're having a little bit of problems with turbulence and this and that, you're shitting yourself going, my gosh, Lord, I'm never going to whinge about a bloody thing so long as these turbulence stops and we get out of this crap without crashing the plane. I'm never going to complain about a thing. And the baby crying don't seem so bad anymore. And then when the plane straightens up and an hour later the baby starts up again, you're like, oh, for the love of God, I'd give anything to shut that baby up. Whereas before, when the plane was dipping up and down and the kid was screaming, you couldn't have given a damn. You just didn't want the plane to crash. It's perspective. But in all this, I want to say that if there is a massive issue, things do hit the deck, the system does go AWOL, don't sort of get tied up in all the stress of worrying about this stuff. Don't sort of, burn yourself out with panic over all this stuff. Because panic ain't going to do you a damn thing except do your head in. And, it is very possible to live without money. The Australian Aborigines done it for thousands of years. Trade isn't so great. You can't develop a country as quick without credit and all this sort of stuff. But, at the end of the day, you can exist by foraging food, by, hunting as they did with spears. You can use firewood as I do to, go to bed warm every night. And, life without money still goes on. But it'll be a lot harder for some than others. The government bureaucrat who push papers around, your accountant, your lawyer, all those people, having a Mercedes-Benz don't mean much if your kid's howling from hunger every night and you haven't eaten yourself for 3 days. So in all this, don't panic about all this stuff. Look at it all and prepare to be able to work yourself out if money does collapse. Set yourself up in a position whereby you won't end up on the bottom of the pecking order if there is serious currency problems. I don't know if you realise this, but I think it's almost 80% of international transactions between companies are not done with money. They are done with goods in a barter-style setup. Pepsi, this is quite well known, Pepsi sells Pepsi to Russia. Now, with the way the ruble has been going up and down for years and all that and being a rather unstable currency, they take payment of Pepsi with Stolichnaya vodka. They swap Pepsi for a certain amount of Stolichnaya vodka, which they import back into the United States, I believe, and resell again. That's quite well known. So trade can exist without money because it actually does in a massive amount of cases. There is something called the Terra, T-E-R-R-A. I've read the white paper on it, and you probably should yourself, and one day I'll talk a bit more about it and explain it. But that's basically a commodity currency that's being proposed by someone, and it's a brilliant little setup. The way it's thought out is very good. But, there's been issues with international trade being a bit rocky due to currency fluctuations, and it is suggested that is a currency that could be used because it's essentially a commodity currency to get past the change in rate between the euro and the US dollar, or the Aussie dollar and the US dollar, or the British pound, or whatever. And, it's not really a store of wealth. It's not money as usual, like you usually see it, but it is a pretty smart currency anyways. And that's all based around commodity currency. And, there will be a collapse of a sort in the US, or a crisis of a sort in the US. It is absolutely undeniable. It's on the books. It's in the numbers. There's no way out of it. But don't let it worry you that you can't exist without the US dollar, because first of all, there's barter. And if you set yourself up correctly now, you will be on the top of the pecking order, and that stuck-up bloody government bureaucrat that you dealt with a few weeks ago, they'll be on the bottom of the pack. They'll be the one at your door asking for help. If you set yourself up right, if you know what you need to do. And another one is a lot of the New World Order and all that whole shitstorm of arseholes, they basically love you to be, to use a currency. The world has become dependent on currency. Society in general, uses currency as a form of trade, as some sort of a measurable, token of production, labour and trade of goods. And in all that, if there's any big shake-ups in that, if the idiots who are pulling the strings can pull the strings and hurt you by pulling the strings, but they got the claws in you. Call on the New World Order, call the bank, call the whatever you want. The mongrels who are pulling the strings, they've got control over you when you become entirely dependent on the currency, when your whole life revolves around the incoming and outcoming of currency in and out of your bank account and wallet. And all they got to do, is whatever the hell they want to do to you, because you have already become so dependent on money, on currency. And as you sort of step away from your dependency on currency, you release yourself from the grips of the New World Order, the Matrix, whatever you want to think of it as. They no longer will be able to jerk your chain, jerk your leash, if you sort of step back from it, or basically don't allow it to be able to affect your ability to have a full stomach and go to bed warm at night. And if you've got things in place, food production, foraging, and a good stash of firewood, you won't really be terribly affected by any currency shake-up, debt crisis, or any other shenanigans that may happen in the future. Who knows how it's going to go down, but I can tell you straight out it will go down. But don't panic about it. Just sit there, nut it all out, work out how you're going to deal with it. And, when the time comes, it'll be, as a country, it'll be a bit of a shake-up. But, you as an individual, the transition mightn't be that hard. If you pretty much made the transition before any debt crisis, China wanting its money back, or any other strange stuff occurs. Don't sort of get terribly concerned. Just sort of, think it all out.